What's shaking, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more punk rock, and we're back with a tune from 88 Fingers Louie. And indeed, I was just talking about this tune when I did a reaction to Propagandhi's Rock for Sustainable Capitalism, because it occurred to me in some ways it's sort of a counterpoint to that song, not directly, and indeed I believe it was written before. Let me see. We're listening to 88 Fingers Louie. This is their album Back on the Streets. And this is, it's 1998. This is, 7 years before that song would come out. But yeah, this is 88 Fingers Louie after they had gotten back together the first time. Then they broke up again, and then in the early 2010s or something, they got back together. They put out a new album. So yeah, the band has gone through a couple sort of lifespans. But I do believe they're still back together again these days. But this is in sort of the middle period after they had come back together. Dennis Buckley, the lead singer, you can see him on the right there. That's also Joe Principe, who's one of the members of Rise Against still, as well as on the very left for you. That's Mr. Precision, who was also a founding member of Rise Against, but eventually left that band, but is still now in 88 Fingers Louie again. I did want to show not only the disc, but if you look on the inside, there's a picture of Mr. Precision really getting it as he's wailing. But yeah, this is a song called Punk Rock Rulebook, and again, it seemed to be an interesting, not necessarily counterpoint, but alternative perspective on the same issue of punk rock and sort of being financially compensated for putting together an album or for playing tours and shows and so on. And the song here is basically saying that there's too much judgment in regard to like, oh, this band signed with this label, that means they're a sellout, or this band actually got a contract where they get like a certain amount of royalty revenues, that means they're just in it for the money. And this song is making the case that like, hey, look, man, I still care about the punk rock ethos. I still tried to make sure I knew where the money was coming from, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not 18 anymore, and I don't just need like, one shirt on my back and enough money to pay for a hotel room. I actually have a family now. I actually need to get by and to take care of other people. So hey, do me a favor, close your punk rock rulebook, because you don't know me, you don't know the struggles that I go through, and ultimately you're not part of our creative process, so you don't know that like, we've sold out in our ethos and our ideology and so on. So it's basically a shot at people who are too judgmental toward other groups or other punks for apparently, taking too much money or signing with a bigger label or so on. And again, you could maybe come up with some counter arguments to say that like, hey, there's a difference between, signing for a bigger label but also like accepting like a tour bus from, Coca-Cola or something. And that's not a specific example, that's just like a hypothetical. But the idea is, in a lot of these issues, I think there could be different ways to take it depending on the scale and nature and particulars of the situation in question. But I do think this is a very valid argument that like, look, we still try to be punks. It's not like we just took this money and we didn't ask any questions about where it was coming from or, the people like working with the company and what their values might be. We did look into these things. And at the end of the day, like I said, I think there's a suggestion that like, hey, we're older, we have families, like times have changed and I need to get by. It's like one of the lines in the song. I did want to mention on top of all that lyrical discussion that the punk rock sonics in this one just kick ass, and that's the thing that I've always loved about 88 Fingers Louie. A lot of their songs are, I wouldn't call it pop punk in terms of lyrics, but they are more about like emotional experiences, interpersonal like dynamics and so on. Feeling like you're not up to going out and facing the world. They're not so much about overt political concepts, though I think some of their lyrics do get at like social and cultural issues. But yeah, it's interesting, despite their music or their lyrics perhaps being like a slightly less muckraking, I've always really loved their sound. They have a really sort of kick-ass kind of like melodic hardcore sound. Like in the early days, it was sort of a mixture of melodic hardcore with kind of that skate punk sound, but as they've continued to go on, and I think especially on this album, you really hear the melodic hardcore punk sound. So yeah, this is on Hopeless Records. I don't know if we have a cat number. Hopeless Records 635-2. But yeah, here we go. This is Punk Rock Rulebook by 88 Fingers Louie on their 1998 album Back on the Streets. listening. Don't talk to me about selling out, because I'm not listening. I got a family. You don't have to worry about them, right? Cause times are changing, so am I need to get by without asking questions. I love that riff, that goosebumps, instant. I'm listening to some more. Come on. Said, really do enjoy the sonics of that. I love that sort of breakdown part and that build, and then that sort of like, I don't know how to characterize it, sort of like it's a guitar riff with like swagger, with some style. I really did enjoy that, and then the way it launches back into the last articulation of the chorus. Yeah, like I said, I really do enjoy it both musically and lyrically. I respect what it's saying lyrically. I get that there could be different perspectives, or at least that like, okay, that's fine for you, but there are other bands that have sort of like, you know, candified and rendered plastic the punk rock ethos, and maybe they're not asking the questions that you're asking. So again, I think there could be gradations here. It's like, I really value what Buckley and 88 Fingers Louie are saying here, but I do also understand that there could be other bands, and there are other bands that have perhaps bastardized the punk rock sound and ethos, especially, so that, you know, what they're saying here wouldn't necessarily be a defense against, you know, the accusations and say rock for sustainable capitalism against some other bands. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know, you know, where your ideas come down on this one. As I said, I think there's a lot of different ways you could look at this issue, and I think a lot of different bands have talked about this issue. So again, if there's a song that you're aware of that sort of addresses some of these issues and maybe has a different take, do let me know. Other than that, thank you for listening and watching. I really do appreciate it. Have a good day, have a good night. I'll see you next time.